Hi again then guys, and welcome to another circuit setup for the, of course, 1.25 patch in Gran Turismo Sport, and later on today we're also going to be reviewing this same car, the Shelby Daytona Cobra, my personal favourite car of the 1.25 patch, a car which I was hoping that they would bring back to the game. Now, before, I probably wouldn't have done a tune setup video for this car, because it's Group X, of course, we all know my opinions on that, many of you guys share those opinions, but now that we actually have some classic events in career mode, you can actually get some use out of them beyond just one make racing or custom events. So this one is designed for relatively stock specs, so if you increase the power or decrease it, likewise with the weight, then of course you can adjust it accordingly. But as you can see, I've dropped the weight a little bit, increased the power a little bit, but I haven't actually upgraded it at all. It's still the stock level because it costs so much in terms of mileage points in particular to actually upgrade the car. Then as far as traction control, I've got that turned off personally. That'll depend on you, of course. As far as tyres, we've got it on racing hards to show what it can do in most circumstances, because of course softs or even mediums will be even quicker. As far as the suspension, I've dropped the ride height just a little bit, about 5mm or so, to 120 on the front, 140 on the back. Then the frequency we've got on 2.8 with anti-roll 6 front and rear. 56 I've increased the compression aspect of the dampers to, which is basically just one click up compared to what it was. 85 on the rebound, neutral camber and toe, which might be surprising for a classic, but trust me, you don't need it on this car. It handles really, really well. Now in a second I'm going to take it out to Le Mans with the chicanes to give you some idea of what it can do in action, but of course on Le Mans typically you wouldn't need the maximum downforce, which is what I gave it. So of course you can get better top speed if you set it low. So again, it depends on the circuit that you're taking it to. Most of the time I would probably use this car more on a technical track, something like Dragon Trail for instance, where it's not so much about top end speed, whereas at Le Mans of course you'll want to drop that to be able to keep up with stuff like your Ferrari P4s and your XJ13s, which typically have a lot more top end power. As far as the diff, I've at least gone for halfway on the initial torque and then as low as possible for both acceleration and braking. I have to say that is literally perfect for me. I love the handling on this car, but of course it might vary for you. You can always try other things and come back and reset it to this one if you see fit. And as far as the gearbox, of course, as I said, it's not a top speed build. It's, as with most of my circuit tunes, more about the handling than the speed, because that depends on the power. If you're running less power, you'll need different ratios. If you're running more power, you'll need different. So I've basically gone somewhere in between with an auto setting of 193, and then I haven't touched the rest. Even the final drive I've left exactly as it was. And that's good enough to give you, even with full downforce, around 170-ish miles per hour with this kind of power as well. So obviously if you reduce the downforce and increase the power especially, you could probably get this thing, I should think, over 200 quite comfortably. Maybe not quite as quick as in GT6, around 225, but quicker than 200 I would have thought quite easily on this car. So that's it for the tune. Now of course you want to see what it can do in action. So, as I said, let's take it to Le Mans. So, as I mentioned just now, the thing about this Daytona is that it's not typically a car that I would go for on a high-end circuit, on a top-speed circuit. In other words, something like Le Mans really does favour cars with a lot of top-end power. If you're talking about modern cars, classics, it doesn't really matter. But the great thing about this one is, if you take it on a track which requires a decent amount of speed, but also a really good amount of handling, as I said, technical circuits, that is where the Daytona really shines. Because although it doesn't have the sheer power of some of the others, most of the others even, it's a really, really good cornering machine, and I would actually put this one probably even higher in my personal rank as far as the really expensive cars go, the high rollers, as even better than the Ferrari 250 GTO, which previous to this was probably my favourite in terms of handling. The Mura's okay, but it's a bit slippery. The P4 is basically a prototype, so you kind of know what you're going to get, a really primitive prototype compared to today. And stuff like the Ford Mark IV, again, it's a bit heavier than the others, so you can factor that in. Whereas this one, like the 250 GTO, it's front engine instead of mid, so it's got more of a Grand Tourer kind of vibe, and the handling is a lot sharper than the 250 GTO. The 250 feels great, it feels very Italian, kind of like an old Aston Martin DB5 in a similar kind of sense. This one though feels, it's more focused. It can easily take on even newer race cars of a similar kind of power and spec, and in some cases it can punch above its weight as well. So if you do decide to buy the Daytona, first of all, I would strongly recommend doing so, because for one thing, it's 5 million credits cheaper than the others in the category, but it's also, I would say, possibly, and for me personally, definitely, the best handling of all of them. So if you do buy it, I don't think you'll be disappointed. It also sounds fantastic, and of course stick around again to the review later today to hear more of it, but I'm very happy with the car, and for those of you who do try this tune, I hope you have a ton of fun with it. And of course, if you are new to the channel, you can click through here on screen to see all of my other tune setups for GT Sport. But that's it for this pick. Of course, I'll see you guys next time, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.